Hi guys, this week for the word of the day, we're actually not going to get a new word. We're going to take a pause and we are going to review the last 5 words we learned and talk about our next assignment for the vocabulary story. And so this week, today we're doing a review, and then next class you're actually going to get an idiom, which is a phrase. So you're going to get a phrase instead of a word. So last time we finished 5 words, I assigned you guys a vocabulary story, asking you to write a story using these 5 words. And I said it could be a big story, like it could be something really creative, or it could just be like a sentence using each word. The assignment didn't go super well. People who did it did a great job, but a lot of people chose not to do it or were confused. I don't really know. So I really thought hard before I assigned it again because I don't really like to repeat past mistakes. So before we do our second vocabulary story, we're going to review all of the words. And I'm actually going to give you 2 weeks to work on it, but I want you, because I'm giving you more time, to maybe put a little bit more effort in and to really reach out if you need help. All right, so the words that we have learned in the past 3 weeks, we learned the word analogy. And an analogy is a similarity in some respects between things that are otherwise unlike. It's also an explanation of something by comparing it with something similar. And that second definition is the one that makes more sense to me. An explanation of something by comparing it with something similar. So, I want to explain to people what it's like being a virtual teacher, but most people aren't virtual teachers, so I'm going to try to make a connection to something a lot of people have done, which is maybe when they were a kid, they played school. Or a lot of you guys made connections with movie or TV, right? So even if you're not in virtual school, you know what it's like to be just kind of watching something on TV. So now I'm explaining something in a way people can understand it. So these were just some of the examples. I shared that teaching virtual school reminded me of playing school as a child. We talked about 13th, the documentary by Ava DuVernay, where she talks about how we moved from slavery to mass incarceration. And then I also shared this street art that I found near my house. And it's a good thing I took this picture because it's now gone. All right. Next word. Okay, the next word was, I think, antibodies. An antibody is a protein that your body produces in response to a toxin. So an antibody is something that your body makes to protect itself against an infection or some kind of something you don't want. And right now, obviously, that relates a lot to coronavirus, COVID, all of that. But there's also some connections we could make that are less literal. For example, when we participated in the Black Lives Matter community protest and we lined up and down Hosea to act as an antibody against racism, or even in the Odyssey when Odysseus tells Calypso, hey, I've already been through so many difficult things, I can handle this. Basically, this idea that we can develop antibodies to hardship and things. So that is an antibody. The next word was aspire. Aspire. So that was about having great ambition to desire strongly. And a lot of us lost a role model or someone we looked up to recently with Chadwick Boseman. And with this word, I tried to make you think about what you would want to aspire to be or do. The only difference between a hero and a villain is that the villain chooses to use that power in a way that is selfish and hurts other people. And I would hope that we would aspire to use our powers in a generous way, in a way that is uplifting to others. Now, aspire is a great word that really ties into being a hero. The next word was bamboozle, which is just such a fun word to say. If you haven't tried it, please just say bamboozle. It's so fun. And that means to deceive by elaborate trickery and hoodwink, to cheat, trick, or swindle. Now, it may seem crazy, we go from this heroic word aspire to this kind of bad word, bamboozle. But as we see in the Odyssey, sometimes your heroes have to escape by trickery. You know, sometimes violence isn't the answer, even though Odysseus did get violent. But sometimes, like, you can trick, you can manipulate, you can, that could be your power, problem solving. So we just saw Odysseus bamboozle the Cyclops by offering him wine and getting him drunk, blinding him while he fell asleep. That was violent. And then tying his men under sheep so that even though the Cyclops was sitting in the doorway, he couldn't tell that Odysseus and his men were leaving. And they're also cute dogs. Hey guys, hi cute dogs. Okay, last word that we have learned in this set is bizarre. Bizarre, just being weird and strange. And I just want to challenge you to think that, like, your superhero, your superpower could be something bizarre and strange. And that's often, like, really interesting and fun. Hands on Hands, Florida Men, Me and Mr. Bennett, just all really bizarre things in your life, in your world at this point. Okay, so those are our 5 words. And so with your second vocabulary story, I'm going to be asking you to create sort of an origin story to tell us of a time when you had to overcome something, when you were trapped between a rock and a hard place, which we'll learn about last time. But I want you to find a way to use these words to tell a story of a time that you had to overcome something. Maybe it was a bizarre situation that you had to bamboozle your way out of. Maybe it's something that you aspire to solve one day for the world. Maybe it's something that you had to develop an antibody to, either literally, like in your body, you had to develop a immune response to something, or figuratively, you had to figure out how to defend yourself against something. So these are all of the ideas that are going to go into our next vocabulary story. So I'm putting the assignment on Classroom today. You're going to have 2 weeks to do it. I'm going to give you some freedom in how you choose to do it. If you want it to be a PowerPoint, if you want it to be a typed story, if you want to do like a video version of the story. But just sort of find some time to review these words and think about how you could craft a story about overcoming some kind of obstacle using these words. And that is your challenge. Are you up to it? I know you are.